Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the December edition of the Data Quality Network meeting. I'm Dan Berger. I'm coming to you from IU10 this morning. We had a conversation at the department last month about reminding everybody where everything is prior to the meetings. So I wanted to just share a screen with you real quick, that if you go to the Data Quality Network site and you go to meeting info, what we do is we post the agenda. Actually, we post the agenda fairly quickly after each meeting. And if you choose the upcoming meeting, you can see all the topics. You can see where to submit questions ahead of time. You can see who's going to present at which sections. And if there are any handouts, and we do our best to get the handouts up as quickly as we can, you can download and print them ahead of time. There will be an activity as part of the Future Ready conversation this afternoon, so if you want to get a copy, you could download and take a look at that activity right here. So I'll go back to my presentation here and thank Lori and Barry for their presentations last month. Hope you found the child accounting information useful. We have a full agenda today. We'll talk about EdFacts, a little update on civil rights, some data governance. And I want to highlight what we're going to do at the very end. We're going to present last month's award winner for the free Data Summit registration, and we will draw another winner at the very end of today's session. If you would like to participate in the registration, in the drawing, I'm going to pause for a second so you can write down this URL. Just complete the form that's at the other end of this URL, and then you will end up on the spinning wheel with a chance to win a free registration. Shameless plug, the dates for the summit. And a reminder that time is running out to nominate somebody for the Data Quality Award of Excellence. Take note of that URL so that you can get your favorite person nominated. And so without further ado, we'll stop sharing at this end and send it over to IU15.
All right, we have Joe here from PDE today, so we'll hand it over to Joe to get started.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Cohen. I'm from the Department of Education, and I am their EdFacts and Civil Rights Data Coordinator. I have been with the department for a little over 7 years in that capacity. And today I'm going to talk to you about what the federal government knows about your district based on data that we collect in PIMS and also data that you provide during the civil rights data collection. So the proper name for EdFacts is actually the EdFacts Initiative. It was started about 8 years ago with the federal government around the time of No Child Left Behind, about midway point. It has continued through No Child Left Behind and has been recently updated for the Every Student Succeeds Act. So what is the EdFacts Initiative? The EdFacts Initiative is the U.S. Department of Education's initiative to collect, analyze, and promote the use of quality data from pre-K through grade 12. And we also have 2 collections that we have for post-secondary for the collegiate students in the state. It's used to support the planning and policy making and more importantly, the budget decision making for all the states throughout the United States and our territories. It is a centralized location for all of the data from all of the states housed in one location in Washington. It does collect data based on the districts and the school demographics, program participation from the school districts throughout the nation, and then also the performance data. Now, EdFacts does centralize all the data. It is a place where you can go. They do publish all the data that we submit to them. And you can go out, you can pull the published reports, and you can do comparisons for your district to other districts within the Commonwealth and to other districts throughout the entire country and all of our territories as well. The purpose of EdFacts is to collect and report accurate data for the K through 12 program, and also including pre-K. And this is used for improved educational planning, not just on a state level. We do use EdFacts data on the state level as well, but the federal government uses the EdFacts data to plan programs throughout the entire country. So in Pennsylvania, we are the 6th largest submission state for EdFacts. So our data really does have high importance. So that's why we always strive in our state to make sure that our data is the most accurate that we can give to them. And in fact, this past year, Pennsylvania won 5 awards for our data from the Federal Department of Education for our submitting data, our accuracy, and our timeliness on getting that data in. So if you're ever doing your job, submitting PIMS reports and all that stuff, and you think, oh, my district's so small, how is this actually affecting anything? It really does. Pennsylvania is really a keystone when it comes to submitting our data for the nation. We have a lot of the programs, if not all of the programs that they fund. So the data that we collect and we submit helps further those programs. The EdFacts initiative was originally planned to reduce the data burden on the states and the districts and each individual school. Now, I know you guys have a lot of PIMS submissions that you have to do, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, Joe, how is this actually reducing the burden on my school district? Believe it or not, it does. Without us submitting the data through EdFacts, the federal government would actually be knocking on your doors more often and asking you for this data to be submitted to them. This also streamlines the data process. So in the past, before the EdFacts initiative, the federal government may come in and say, okay, we need from your district this data, these data groups, this amount of information. And you give it to them, and then they come back and they say, okay, well, you know what? We need this too. And now we need this, and now we need this. EdFacts is on a 3-year cycle. So basically what this does is it tells the federal government, you have to come up with every piece of data that you will need over this 3-year period. And you have to get that out to the states so the states can get that into the hands of their districts. So you're not going to collect any more data or any less data during that 3-year period. Now, there are anomalies. There are times that the federal government comes back and says, oh, we forgot this, so we're going to add this. But even that process takes them a year to get it to the states. So it gives us a year in advance to plan and let you all know, we're going to have to, bless you, we're going to have to actually ask you to get this data for us as well. And throughout this process, they do encourage states, districts, schools to give the most accurate data that you can give, to give it as efficiently and effectively as you can give it, because they allow you to go out and do a comparison of yourself with other states, other districts within that state. So you can actually go out and find districts that are your same size, your same demographic information, and do a comparison to see how your district is doing, or see how our state is doing against other states across the country. So what is the main purpose of EdFacts and everything that we're talking about today? Well, if you haven't guessed it so far, the main purpose is data. Okay, everything is run by data nowadays. We're all in some database somewhere, whether it be with our employer, whether it be with doctor's office, insurance companies. We're all in a database. And that data that is collected on each and every one of us, or on each and every one of our students, on each and every one of our districts, is used somewhere to better a program, create a program, or even end a program. All the data that we collect, even though when you submit it in PIMS, it may be student level or staff level data, all the data that we submit to the federal government through the EdFacts initiative is all aggregate data. So they cannot pinpoint down to any one specific student within your district from this data that we provide to them. Now, they also will censor, if you will, data that could allow somebody to pinpoint down to a specific student or a specific group of students in your district. So, you know, a lot of the data that we submit to them has to do with race and ethnicity. You know, so, and you know that there are the larger races, the larger number for races, but then there are also the races where we have very few in this state. Now, if you're in Hawaii, you may have a lot of Pacific Islanders, but here in central Pennsylvania, we don't have that many. So when our reports are produced on a federal level, if we have less than 10 Pacific Islanders in a school district or even in the state, they will just take that information right off the report. So even on a level where we have over 1 million students in our state, you know, if somebody's looking for 10 Pacific Islanders across our entire state, it's going to be hard to find them. But even on a federal level, they think if you have 10, that's still enough to give somebody enough information that they could pinpoint it down to a specific group or a specific student. So they will not publish that information. And all the data that we provide to them is used somewhere on a federal level. Now, because it is sent to the Federal Department of Education, doesn't mean it's just used by the Federal Department of Education. As you'll see throughout this presentation, it's used by numerous offices throughout the entire government, including Capitol Hill up to the Oval Office itself. So that's why it's also important that we get them the data timely and we get it as correct as possible. So what are the steps of data processing? Well, first you have to collect the data. Now, it's easy to collect the data. You could, you know, say, okay, we're just going to collect everything about our students. But you soon find that everything is way too much. There is some information that we just don't need. We won't use it, so why collect it? So for EdFacts, one of my main jobs is to let our program offices within the Department of Education know what data we're going to be collecting. That information then gets disseminated out to the school districts. You know, so every time you see a PIMS update come out, you know, where you're, okay, we're no longer going to collect this information, but now we're going to ask you for this information. 9 times out of 10, it has something to do with the EdFacts initiative. Okay, that could mean that they're either no longer interested, and interest, you know, does wane. You know, between President Obama and now President Trump, you know, we have actually gotten rid of about 12 EdFacts reports that we originally were submitting because the Obama administration was heavily looking into like the CTE schools. Okay. With the Trump administration, it's now moving more to looking at the charter schools and, you know, programs that deal with charters. So, you know, we've gotten rid of a lot of the EdFacts reports that had to do with the CTE, but now we're going to be focusing more on charter schools with the Trump administration. So those reports have went away, but just because a report went away doesn't mean I get this, you know, kicked back in my office and not do anything for a year. It then means I have to go out to our program offices and say, okay, we're going to change this. We now aren't going to focus so much over here, but we're going to focus over here. So they'll let you know, all right, we're going to start focusing more on this. So for the next 3-year cycle, we're going to collect more information on this. So, you know, we don't want it to be, you know, you just blindly collecting data. You know how tedious that could be. So, we let you know, okay, this is what we want you to collect for us. But that doesn't mean that you can't collect things just in your own district. We understand as well that districts have their own needs. So, the big thing with data processing is knowing what to collect, knowing when to collect it, knowing how to collect it, knowing, where to keep it. We live in an age where things get cyber attacked all the time. So, you need to be able to make sure that that data is going to be safe and everything. So now you have all this data. So what do you do with it? Okay, well, you analyze this data. You look for, like objects. Okay, we have this many, African-American girls. We have this many African-American boys. Okay, so good. Now we know this. So now what do we do with this? We have to analyze the data that we receive. We have to, again, not just collect it for the sake of collecting it, but get the data, analyze it, and then use that data to, help with programs or help with funding or, help with lists on field trips and things of that nature. After you've done your analyzation of the data, you have to report it. Okay, you don't want to collect this data and then analyze this data for no reason. So what do you do with it? You report it. Usually you're reporting it through PIMS. Okay, but I spent 13 years in a school district, so I know that not all the data that is collected is a PIMS report. Sometimes your business manager wants to know certain things, or your principal on a school level wants to know certain things. Your superintendent wants to know certain things. So that means you go out and you collect the data based on what they're looking for, analyze it, and then you get it back to them in whatever format they're looking for. And the final step in the data collection process is using that data. So what are we going to use this data for? In Pennsylvania, we use it for federal reporting, program reporting, reports that get sent to our own legislature, funding. We use it for funding. We use it for, a myriad of things. So you have to understand when you get to that use point, everything is pretty much a circle with this. So we tell you we need this data. We're going to use it for this. So even throughout any point of the data collection process, it always leads to the next point. And the use will always lead back to the collect. So data is a great big circle, and you're going to see that throughout the rest of this presentation. Currently, we submit 206 files through the EdFax initiative to the U.S. Department of Education. Again, it is aggregate data only. We never give specific data. And our data is broken into 3 levels: the SEA level, which is the state level, PDE level, the LEA, which is your local education administration, and then the school level. Not all of the reports that we submit for the EdFax initiative take all 3 levels of data. Sometimes the program office that is requesting this data only wants to see it based on the school information. So they want to see a listing of every school that we have in the Commonwealth and aggregate counts for the information that they're looking for. Same thing with the LEA. Sometimes we have to only give them the LEA level. So they don't want to see it drilled down to a school level, but they want to see the data based on an LEA level. And then sometimes they just want to see it on a state level. They just want to see that, how the state looks in the lines of a program that is being offered or being used by the Department of Education. The majority of our data is reported just on the state level, but around 40%, 50%, a little less than 50% is collected across all 3 levels. And again, the level that they choose for us to give to them is based on the program need and the program office that they're requesting it for. Each state has one EdFax coordinator, that's me, whose job it is to gather the data from their state and submit it to EdFax. It's a thankless job, but somebody has to do it. And EdFax the EdFax collection is actually mandatory. for every state in all of our territories. So it's not something that we can opt out of. It is something that, they come back and they say, you must do this. If you expect to keep getting your funding, then you need to give us this information. Some of the collections in EdFacts. We have our state data collections. We have the Common Core data. We have the CSPRs. That's where it's like more of the assessment, the migrant information, the homeless information. They all are placed into what's called the CSPR, the Consolidated State Performances. The IDEA, which is special education. Our civil rights data. Even though civil rights data is its own collection by the Department of Census and the Department of Civil Rights, we do have throughout the EdFacts process specific civil rights data collections. And then this one doesn't apply to us, but it is a system that's out there. It's the EASY, the Electronic Application System for Indian Education. So some of the information that we do report, of course, general information regarding our schools and our LEAs. We do produce annually a directory of schools and LEAs that we submit to the federal government. During that time, we let them know if we had any schools that closed, any new schools that opened, any LEAs that closed, any LEAs, schools, whatever the case may be, that may have merged together. We have to report that, but we only report it once a year for them. Our accountability, our assessment, just to name a few. Charter schools, again, like I said, under the new President Trump administration, charter schools is now the focal point for a lot of the data collection. Graduates and dropouts. I'm sure if you go out and you look at, in fact, matter of fact, a couple years ago at the Data Summit, we had a gentleman from the just lost my Newsweek with the statistics for across the country, how schools are doing with graduations and how colleges are doing with graduations and all that stuff. And the U.S. News and World Reports, I guess it was, they actually use EdFacts data. So we report our graduates and our dropouts. That goes into magazines such as that, where they say, okay, well, this year Pennsylvania is number 10 for graduates. They're up 3 from 2 years ago, whatever the case may be. So this data isn't just used by federal agencies. It's also used by the media. The first 16 files that we submit every year are pulled from your October snapshot. So, how you have this October snapshot, you're given a certain amount of time to get it in, and then people tell you, no, you can't make any changes, and you beg and you plead and say, oh, but we gave the wrong information, we really got to change this. No, we really can't do that. Well, this is why. Because come December 15th, I'm pulling all of the information from the October 1 snapshot so I can start preparing the files that will be due to the federal government in January. So in order to give us enough time, me enough time, to make sure that all the data that we are submitting is as accurate as we can possibly get it, we do have to say, all right, we'll try to let you do it, but maybe we can, maybe we can't. And a lot of times that's, people coming and saying, hey, this school needs to change their data. Is that going to mess up your timeline to get the submissions into the federal government? And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. But that's why we are so strict with the October 1 snapshot information, because we have a limited amount of time to have you submit it, have it vetted for accuracy, have a correction period, and still be able to get these first 16 files into the federal government in January. The files that we submit that are pulled from the October snapshot, open and closed schools, inactive schools. Maybe you have a school in your district that's just closing for a year. So we now have the ability that we can, instead of closing that school like we have done in the past, we can now inactivate that school. So you don't have to come back after the renovations are done and get a brand new school number and everything like that. We can just reopen the school. But this is information that we have to report to the federal government in January. Your enrollment information, the grades that you're offering for that current school year. of course, charter school information. And then another big one that we report in the beginning of the year is your free and reduced lunch counts. Now, EDFAX runs a year behind. So let me correct that. After these first 16 files are submitted, EDFAX runs a year behind. So right now you're in school year 18-19, I believe. So when I submit these files in January, I'll be submitting your enrollment information, your open, your close, all of that for what you would have been as of October 1st of 2018. Okay, and then I go back to submitting all of the data that you've already vetted for school year 17-18. All right, but the October 1 is still the information I have to submit to start out the school year 18-19, the year 18-19. So even though I'm reporting your assessment information and all that stuff based on testing from school year 17-18, in January, I start my 18-19 year. So I'm really not a year behind everybody else, but I'm more like four to 5 months behind everybody else. So how is this data used? You've heard me talk about, of course, the U.S. Department of Education. This data is also used by the United States Congress and the Senate. It's used by the Census Bureau. Of course, it's used by state and local education agencies. And more importantly, it's used by the media. So if you've ever picked up U.S. News and World Reports or Newsweek or The Patriot, and they say, oh, you know, this school district is ranked this among other school districts in the state. And you look at it, you're like, where did they get this information from? 9 times out of 10, they got it from EDFAX, because it's all put in there, it's all published, and it's open for anybody, any member of the media, any public, anybody from the public can go out to the Department of Education's website and they can view the EDFAX reports for every state across the country. The U.S. Department of Education uses this data to establish new programs, to keep programs, to see what programs are working, what programs are not working. Congress and Senate, of course, use this data to set the budget for the U.S. Department of Education. And the U.S. Department of Education then also uses this data to set the state budget. So how money just rolls downhill on that one. So it starts out, the data is pulled by the Senate or the Congress when they're starting to do their new budget year. And it may not go down specifically to a state level, but they will look at the aggregate data for the entire country and say, okay, well, we're noticing this program is working well on a federal level across the entire country. So we're going to continue funding it, okay? Or this program is not working. So we're going to just do away with this program. And they give it a DOA date, okay? It comes back then to once the Department of Education, Federal Department of Education gets their annual allotment of money from the federal budget, they say, okay, this program is working very well in this state. So we're going to continue to fund it. Okay, but this program not working so well in this state. So we're going to start taking money back away from that. The program's not working, we're no longer going to fund it. So that's why it's important that we get the most accurate data into the feds for this information. The Census Bureau uses this data to establish trends and educational information. And the Census Bureau, a lot of the information from the Census Bureau actually is used by realtors. So when you go out to places like Zillow and those the popular websites for real estate agencies, and you see where they say, okay, well, this is the amount of crime. This is the schools that's in this area. This is how well the schools are performing. They pull all of this information in from the U.S. Census, the Census Bureau, which pulls all their information in from EDFAX. So that's how they can tell you if a school district is performing well at a home that you're looking at. The SEA and the LEA also use this information to establish budgets. You know yourselves from your LEA experiences that if a program is doing well, you'll continue to fund it. If a program is not doing well, you will start taking funding back from that program. And we use the EDFAX data to do that as well in this state. And then the media, of course, use it to report the status of education in our country. So the data cycle, and you'll notice here once it's fully on the screen that no matter where you start, it is just a huge circle. So we're going to start with the school. So we have the data on a school level, and most of the data that is reported does start on a school level. It's up to the schools to collect this data to give then to their LEA. The LEA then takes that information and they provide it to the state. The state then takes that information, we provide it to the Department of Education. The Department of Education then gets that information out to the program offices. Now, it's not just program offices within the Federal Department of Education. They will also get it out to program offices on a state level or on a district level. So this is one part where the data actually can be branched out and sent to many different areas. And then finally, that data, once it's all been vetted and all been approved by the states and the Federal Department of Education, it becomes public files, and it is used then for the many resources that we had talked about. But it doesn't matter where you start in this circle. The data is just, you can pop in at any part of this circle and you'll see that data is being collected, analyzed, used, and then sent back out to different places. The center hub for this entire circle, of course, is data. So let's talk about some key elements of EDFACS itself. Again, EDFACS does not collect individual student information or staff information. It's always aggregate data. Data are collected from multiple sources. Okay, so when we're collecting data, you may see that in PIMS, you have to submit what looks like the same exact data for multiple reports or multiple times throughout the year. And that's because when we collect data and we submit it to the federal government, we collect it from multiple collections. And then we give an aggregate of that data. All data is reported for a specific time frame. So with EDFACS, we do the previous school year, so that way we're not saying, okay, well, we're going to give you data from 10 years ago because it looked really good 10 years ago, because we didn't have as much of it then. But so that's why we require you to give us specific data for a specific time frame. The feds give us a specific time frame that we have to report data on as well. And then data are associated with the school year of performance. And the big thing, how does this affect me? Everything I've been talking about today has one big key point. It all affects your funding. Data is what makes the world go round, and in this case, data is also what gives you money to do things like you see on the screen here, to have school safety, to buy new textbooks, the EL program, your school lunches, your transportation, special education, assessment testing, the whole 9 yards. Everything is tied back to funding. So what are some factors in the data that you collect? If you provide incorrect snapshot data or delayed in your snapshot or delayed in your correction, it will affect the information that we provide to the federal government. Now, that may not sound, like, oh, I'm just one school, this isn't going to have that big of an impact. Actually, it does. It really does. Now, the federal government does have a system of checks and balances for our data as well. So if we submit data to them and they see that there's some anomaly to it, they'll email me and they'll be like, hey, school A last year reported they had 10,000 students, but this year they're reporting they have 100 students. What happened? So we then reach out to school A and be like, hey, did you get your October 1 enrollments in correctly? And, usually we find out that it was just an anomaly and we make a correction, and then we submit it back up. But the problem is when we make a correction, it delays the process. So we can submit corrected data to the federal government, but it delays our process. So You know, they may be going through and planning their budget for school year 1920 for the, you know, for Title I funding. And we have to go in as a state then, because we can't just say, we just need to correct one school. No, they say, oh, take Pennsylvania out, the entire state, and we have to submit a correction in there, and they won't put us back in until we have everything correct and it's been signed off on. So when you make errors in your October 1 and you don't get them corrected in time, it does slow down everything, and it takes our state from here and puts us over here until we get everything corrected. And then we get put back here, and sometimes we get put back here and they're like, oh, well, sorry, we've already handed out the funding for this program for next year, so you're not going to get as much. So that's what makes it so important. That's why, you know, people like Deb and Dave and everybody are constantly harping, get your October 1 in, make sure it's correct. No, we cannot accept this. It's all because in the grand scheme of things, we have one goal that we have to take care of. And if we don't take care of that, it could affect the entire Commonwealth. Like all things, procrastination will affect the information that you provide. If you know that you have October 1 due on October 1, and you wait until September 30 to even start pulling your data on a school level or on an LEA level, and you know it's going to be incorrect, but you go ahead and you submit it anyway because, oh, we're going to give you a correction period. But then, you know, something happens, God forbid, during that correction period, you don't get it corrected. You know, you've just basically messed up your entire district for an entire year, an entire cycle year. So procrastination, never a good option when it comes to getting your information in. And we're not saying we don't understand things happen. Things happen all the time, you know, but, you know, always plan for, you know, worst case scenario. So what can you do? What can you do on a school level, on an LEA level to help move this process along efficiently and effectively? Submit accurate data in your snapshots. That's the best thing you could do. You know, get it in there right the first time, no corrections, and then you're done. And then you can, you know, I know you all have plenty of time to take a break back in your offices, ha ha ha. But, you know, at least that's one less stress that you'll have. Verify your submitted data. You know, if you get information back from us or even from people in your school district saying, hey, we're not quite sure this data is correct. You know, always verify. If it's not correct, let us know as soon as you possibly can. The sooner you let us know, the more we're able to help get the corrections in. Address, I guess I got to hit the mouse here to make it move. It's not moving. There we go. Verify your submitted data. Address corrections quickly and effectively. Stay current with the PIMS updates and the webinars. That includes attending the DQN. You know, attending anytime you see that there's a webinar that, you know, may not even be something you are really, really interested in, but if it's something that will help you, sign up for it. Get into it, you know, and stay up to date with everything. Attend the annual PDE Data Summit. There is so much information that you can learn there just, you know, just by walking around and talking to people. Plus, you get to interact with people from PDE. You get to see me. You can come see me. You know, and you know, that's a great way to stay current with everything as well. There we go. And finally, don't delay. Never delay with what you're doing. You know, the more you delay, the better chance you have of getting inaccurate data into us or not even being able to do your corrections or anything like that. If you would like more information, again, as they were saying earlier, that this publication will not be available after this webinar. But if you would like more information, here's some links that you can go out to. You can send me an email, and I will send you out information about the EdFacts initiative and all of that. So it's quite interesting. Kind of boring, but it's quite interesting. Okay, now let's move on to the second part of the EdFacts presentation. and that deals with your civil rights data collection. Oh. Okay, so the civil rights data collection, as you probably know, is a collection that is done every 2 years by the Office of Civil Rights, Federal Department of Civil Rights. And it is used for a lot of the civil rights, well, all of the civil rights funding, but it's also used quite a bit by the media and by figures in the Senate and the Congress to see how we are progressing in the form of civil rights across the entire country. So we're going to look at some points here for the CRDC. We are in a collection year right now. If you're not the civil rights collection person that's responsible for your district, your person probably has already received the information for their login, their password, and the flat files on how to get the data submitted into the Office of Civil Rights. But we're going to talk about what's new for 2017-18. We're going to step through the reporting process. We're going to look at the best practices for data submitters. We're going to talk about the SEA engagement on the civil rights data, and then we're going to have any resources and questions that you may have. So, little background on this. The Civil Rights Data Collection, or the CRDC as we call it, began in 1968. It is a biennial collection of district and school level data. So every 2 years, this is collected. Now, I will tell you, there has been talks in the past couple years that this will become an annual collection. So again, that's not written in stone. Oh, come on. For those of you that don't know, I'm sure you realize there is an audience here and everybody just like, so, but look on the bright side. The more often you do it, the better you'll get at it, okay? The collection was formally administered as the Elementary and Secondary School Survey. It is data collected from every public school district for all public schools within a district across the entire country and in all of our territories. The CRDC collects data on leading civil rights indicators related to educational opportunity from early childhood through grade 12. And the CRDC is an important aspect of the Office of Civil Rights' overall strategy for administering and enforcing civil rights statutes throughout our country. Okay, here's the Congressional Act which allows the CRDC to be collected. It was pursuant to the 1979 Department of Education Organization Act. Okay, so what's the survey population on this? Well, the CRDC collects data from all public schools and districts that have students attending at least 50% of the day and more than 5 students that attend more than 60 cumulative days. So if your school district is a public school district and it doesn't meet those requirements, then you wouldn't be required to submit the CRDC. It is collected from public schools, including special education schools, charter schools, magnet schools, alternative schools, and justice facilities. So pretty much in Pennsylvania, we have all of these things. Pretty much if you are a public school district in Pennsylvania, you are required to submit this. And the last time this was collected, which was in 2015-16, the CRDC received data from 17,337 school districts, which included 96,360 schools that served over 50 million students. So there's a little piece of information that you'll probably see in a magazine somewhere because this is the information that they get from the CRDC. So what are some of the data elements for 17-18? Your staffing and your resources, pathways to college and careers, the college and career readiness for your school district, enrollment and school characteristics, and then a big one, school climate and safety. So I'm not going to go into each individual piece of this, but from this chart there, these are the pieces of information that will be collected in school for the school year 17-18 civil rights data collection. So how is this data used? Well, the Federal Department of Education uses this to issue briefs, to report onto the websites that they maintain. They keep tables of the national and state level estimations for this data, and then they also have the data files, some of which are public, some of which are restricted. And then other uses for this, of course, the media. Anytime you pick up the newspaper, anytime you pick up a magazine and you see statistics regarding anything that has to do with civil rights, not just education, but anything with civil rights, it's information that's stemming from this collection. And then graduate students and public education students and anybody can use this to research articles that they may be preparing for classrooms or for publication into a media product. Here are just a couple of the places that use the data that is collected from the CRDC. I'm sure looking at this, you recognize some of these entities. So some new items for the 17-18 CRDC. We're going to have new items collected for computer science classes. And this is more akin to the PADI, if any of you remember the PADI survey. Numbers of computers in classrooms, numbers of computers in classes that are taught by certified teachers, number of students enrolled in computer classes in high school, number of students enrolled in advanced placement computer science classes. New items regarding your school internet bandwidth, your connection to the outside world, the internet. Whether or not your school is connected through fiber optic connections. Whether the school has Wi-Fi access in every classroom. If the school allows students to take home school-issued devices that they can use to get on the internet from home. If the school allows students to bring in devices they may own, laptops, cell phones, tablets, whatever the case may be, and use those devices to access the internet inside of the school, so onto the school's Wi-Fi. And the number of Wi-Fi enabled devices provided by the school to students, for the students to use for learning. Of course, anytime they add something new, they take stuff away. So you just saw a whole bunch of new stuff that's coming. Well, yeah, breathe easy. Here's some things that were removed. Number of students who received a high school equivalency credential after participating in a high school equivalency exam. Number of students who received a qualifying score on an AP exam. And the number of students who did not receive a qualifying score on an AP exam. I said they were taking some things away. I didn't promise it was going to be the most difficult stuff. So what is the CRDC reporting process? Right now we're in December. We're already about 3-4 months into the collection process. The first step is that the Office of Civil Rights verifies the schools. And they do this by going back to the EdFacts directory reports from school year 17-18. So if your school was listed, your school district was listed as open and active and teaching students in our school year 17-18 directory, you're going to be responsible to do the civil rights data collection. They prepare the data for submission. Now, on the Office of Civil Rights end, preparing the data means that they notify the school of their login information. They make sure that the school can get logged in, or the LEA can get logged in, and they provide the flat files, the template files for data to be collected that it can be uploaded into the system. For the school district end of preparing the data for submission, it's the school district's responsibility to have somebody in the school district who is responsible for the civil rights data collection. That person gets the data, the login information from the Office of Civil Rights. They get the template files, and then they coordinate in-house with their own data people to get the data in a timely fashion in the template format that is requested by the Office of Civil Rights and get it all cleaned up and vetted for submission to the OCR's website. Once all this takes place, the data is then submitted, and you're done for a couple months then. Okay, so once you get your data submitted to the OCR, you're done for a couple months, and then we move on to the next step, where the data is then quality checked by the Office of Civil Rights. Now, whenever your data is quality checked, or if you do not submit data to the CRDC, they notify me as the Civil Rights Data Coordinator for the state. They notify me to say, hey, School A did not submit their data, or School A's data is way, way off what it was when they submitted 2 years ago. Are you aware of any changes? Are you aware of any anomalies that may be happening? If I can't explain it, or if I can't tell them, oh, yeah, I've already talked to that school district, then I have to reach out to the school districts. A lot of times I don't have to. In our last submission year, we had almost 100% reporting across the state for the CRDC. The 2 years prior to that, we did not have 100% reporting, but we were very close. We're very close. So I will say that when it comes to the civil rights data collection for Pennsylvania, we are very good about getting this done, getting it done timely. But the data quality checks, they come back to me as their first line of information. If they can't get in touch with me, or if I can't let them know why we have this anomaly or why the school didn't report, then they will reach out to the school themselves and try to get to the bottom of things. And then once it's all done, once the data has been certified, you may have to re-upload data, or you may have to just give them an explanation for something. Once it's all done, your data is certified and submitted, and you're done. You're done for 2 years. Okay, when verifying schools, they do identify the district contacts, so they confirm or update the contact information for your district. So if you have somebody retired or somebody that just left your district and they get a bounce back, then they will reach out to the district and they'll say, okay, who is your new civil rights data coordinator for your district? And they'll get that information in there, and they'll keep the process moving forward. And then they also go through and they confirm each school's status. Now, if the school just opened, and we were a brand new school district, brand new school, and it just opened in school year 17-18, you may or may not be asked to submit data for the school year 17-18, because you really won't have any data to submit at that point, or you won't have all of the data that they're looking for. So they may request that you submit partial data, or they may give you a year, well, in this case it'd be 2 years, where you do not need to submit that data. When you are preparing your data for submission, get the right people on board, okay? Include all personnel who will know anything about this data. Okay, so look at your data, look at the data that they're requesting, and go to those people, email those people, whatever the case may be. Create a team within your district to get this data so you can get the most accurate data to get submitted in the most efficient time period. Review your data and align it with the CRDC requirements. CRDC may ask for one thing. You may collect something that's very similar to it, but not exactly what the CRDC is looking for. Always give them the best, the best type of data that you have, okay? Verify your sources. Ensure that you're using the appropriate data sources. A big thing is make sure you're giving it for the correct year. They're asking for 17-18, make sure you're giving them 17-18 data. Being that this is a year behind where we're at right now, it could be very easy to give them this current year data. Make sure you're giving them the correct year data for the year that they're looking for. Organize the data by the source, by the school type, and by the reporting for ease of submission. Most of the time, your civil rights data coordinator is on an LEA level, and they're going to put the entire report together and everything. But for all of you that are the civil rights data coordinator, the best source that you could get would be go to the individual school. Get your data in. I know that most of you have SISs that you can pull in great big grand reports and everything, but you don't think that you're the only person in your school district responsible for this. If you have a question, reach out to your schools, reach out to your superintendent, reach out to your principals. Get this data as correct as possible. So that way, whenever it's submitted, you don't have to go back and do it a second time. And it's also the best data that you have. So when it gets published, it puts forth a true positive face of your school. And always ensure the data is accurate and complete. If they're asking for specific information, make sure you're giving them that information. Don't leave blanks. In most of the CRDC, you can either use NA or missing. They have some kind of placeholder that you can put in there so you're not just submitting a blank. When they receive a file with blanks in it, they don't know if you just forgot to do it, if you just didn't want to do it, if you don't have that data. So make sure you put a placeholder in there to let them know, hey, we did see this, we don't have it, or we don't have exactly what you're looking for. And never be afraid to call the Office of Civil Rights. Their customer service is very good. They're very, very nice people, and they give you the phone number. Give them a call and say, hey, we don't quite understand what you're looking for with this. Can you help us out? When submitting your data, big thing is choose the way you're going to be doing it. You can either enter it manually in the Office of Civil Rights website, or you can upload the file. If you're a very small school district or a charter school, you may find it easiest just to go out and just type in the data instead of preparing a flat file to upload to them. But if you're a large school district, it's going to be the easiest way to get this file is to upload it directly into their system. And they will tell you what types of files they can accept into their system. And then identify your data type and make sure that when you're doing the file format for your data, you put it into the type that they're looking for. So that way it doesn't crash on their system, or they don't have to come back and say, oh, well, we were looking for FTE counts and it looks like you gave us dollar amounts, okay? So always make sure you verify what type of data they're looking for. When you're conducting your data quality checks, check for completeness. Make sure you provided data for all your schools and for all the questions. Ensure that the data is reasonable. That means make sure that your data is consistent and without errors. So if you're reporting your enrollment on one section as this amount, make sure that that section, that enrollment that you submit in one section matches what you submit in another section if that's what they're asking for. Look for big differences between your prior year submissions, because they do look for that. When you submit your data for 17-18, they bounce that against your 15-16 file to look for anomalies that may have happened. Big things can happen over a 2-year period. You may have closed a school. You may have opened a school. You may have had students transfer from one side of your district to the other side of the district. So, your numbers are less over here and greater over here. So, look for those anomalies before you even submit your file. That way, when they come back and ask you, you can explain them right away. A lot of times it's just an email. They'll say, hey, we noticed that there's a 20% change in the enrollment in this district. Can you explain what's going on? They're not asking you to resubmit anything. They're just asking you to send them an email saying, oh yeah, we had that school's under renovation, so we moved all these students over to this school, and so that's why there's a greater number for that time period. Conduct spot checks. This is the great way to find errors in your files, not going line by line by line, because when you look at 100,000 lines of data, your eyes start to go cross. So, make a list of things that could be an issue with your data and do spot checks on those things first.
That's all right.
Okay. And then investigate inconsistencies. I think I'm getting the time's up button here, so we're going to move quickly through the rest of this. When certifying and submitting your data, conduct a final data review. If you have any questions too, you can reach out to me. I'm knowledgeable in the area. I can help you. I don't know your data, but if you find something that you just don't understand or you need to do a review on something, feel free, reach out to me. I'll help you as much as I can. And read your certification language carefully. always make sure that you tell your superintendent that this is a final data submission, and they are the designated signee. And it's important that you tell them this because there is a certification page, and like anything that comes from the federal government, you sign your life away, you are signing, or I'm sorry, your superintendent is signing, or their designee is signing, that they certify the information provided is true and correct to the best of their knowledge and belief. A willfully false statement is punishable by law. Okay, just the same as if you're submitting your taxes. You sign that is the best of your knowledge, and if it's wrong, yeah, they will pay you a visit and want to figure out why. So for your CRDC, here's a list of resources. Again, this publication or this presentation will not be published, but if you do need more information about this, feel free to reach out to me. I keep telling you that you can email me, and I haven't given you my email address. My email address is c-jcowan@pa.gov. And I am the EdFax coordinator and the Civil Rights Data coordinator. So some of you may also recognize me because I'm the person that takes care of Edna for the department now too. So yeah. Feel free if you have any questions or anything we didn't cover today, something you need a little more information on, feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I will turn it back over to Shane.
All right, great. We will pause for just a couple of minutes to allow people to submit questions into the question form, and then we'll go directly into Joe's Q&A session. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll start this Q&A session. So let's go out to IU28 for the first question. All right, looks like might have an issue with IU28, so I'll go ahead and I'll read the question, then we'll have Joe answer it. So the question is, how do the feds leverage all this data to improve the education of the students?
The data that is collected is used to improve, really to improve across the the entire spectrum of our students. Not just through EdFax and the CRDC, but through the other data collection processes. They use this to know if what we're doing, what they're doing is actually working or not. If the program is working, then they're going to continue to throw money into it to fund that program to make sure that it continues to work and is successful. If it's not working, they'll be able to see this through the data as well, and they'll look and say, okay, well, it's not working, so what do we do? Do we have to tweak this program? Do we have to abolish this program? Do we need to go back to the drawing board and actually do something that makes more sense? Now, I actually have Deb Rodriguez sitting here with me for this question specifically because she actually had a meeting with the federal government yesterday in regards to this subject.
So the federal government has program officers for all of the various types of monies that they give to states. Special ed has people that come out and monitor them and audit them. We specifically had federal officers visit yesterday because we have a grant for PIMS. They have a responsibility to come out and make sure the money that the federal government is spending is making a difference, down to, is it making a difference across the state? Are there pockets of the state that don't seem to be performing as well as others? Are there subgroup populations that seem like they have a specific need? It impacts the money they give in the future. It could impact the money they already gave us and ask for money back. Many of you received money under Race to the Top grant a few years ago. I mean, there was, if they give money, it's not just a freebie, go ahead and do what you want with it. We've said in advance what we were going to do with it. When you get a grant from the state, you say what you're going to do with it. So part of this is just a control to make sure everybody's doing what they should. But it's also a really important way that they determine programs that are working, as Joe said, and not working. And as data gets more and more detailed, they're able to dive into subgroups. So many of you saw recently the brand new school accountability tool, PA Future Ready Index. You notice that we're no longer just looking at the school as a whole. You can drill down and see the subgroups. And there are schools who have always performed, very well when we were giving a numeric score and looking at the whole group and may have been at the top, and they still are, but you might have a subpopulation or another that needs additional assistance, and that's what this is designed to show.
All right, great. We'll go to IU5 for the next question.
Hi, good morning. Just to be clear, intermediate units are not required to submit for CRDC. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, great. We'll go to IU14 for the next two questions.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna actually start with number 5. It might be a quicker answer than number 4. So, are all odd eds required to submit, or only those that are required to PIMS also for CRDC?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It doesn't come to us at the state. I know all school districts are required to submit this. We'll have to get back. I'm making an assumption if you are a charter school or a full-time CTC that you would receive it also, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay. All right. And then, is there ever a way, or is there talk of getting some of the CRDC data pre-populated from the PIMS data, because a lot of it is kind of repetitive to what the districts are already submitting?
This is actually a question that comes up every time I do a CRDC presentation. Yeah, we did try this 2 years ago. We went out to the pilot schools and did a survey to see how many would be interested. And we did have quite a few that were interested. However, when we released it to go across the entire Commonwealth, not that many were interested. Or if school districts were interested, they wanted us to be able to give them the data and then allow them to change the data once they received it. So we're open to it. However, one of the things that we always have to make sure of, because the CRDC it's a requirement, but it's not a requirement that we actually get any funding for. We have to, of course, everything runs around money. We have to find money that we could create a system that would allow this to happen, but we have to also make sure that we're going to get a positive return on our investment. So if we're going to have, if we're going to invest in this and do this, and then we only have 1 or 2 school districts actually take advantage of it, it really wouldn't, behoove us to do this. So this is not something that we will be looking at for the 17-18 submission. Our next submission would be for this, or the next time it will be requested, unless it becomes an annual collection, would be school year 19-20. So maybe by school year 19-20, we'll have processes in place within PDE that can assist with this. But at this time, no, this is not something that we're looking at.
So Joe might remember the percentages. He actually did an analysis. He worked with eScholar to see how much data we actually had in PIMS. And it wasn't as much as I expected it was going to be. Was it maybe half?
It was just on the south side of half of the data. The problem is with the CRDC is every 2 years they change the data that's being collected. So they may collect the base data, which would remain the same, but if we would have moved forward and built the collection based on the 15-16 data that was collected, we're now, I'm sorry, yeah, 15-16. It's changed now from 15-16 to 17-18 because there's been multiple factors that have affected the CRDC. We've had a change in administration on a national level. You know, the focus of the country has changed due to the, you know, mitigating factors. So for us to actually go in and be able to create something during the down period of the CRDC collection in preparation to have it ready to go, the entire thing may change by the time we get to the actual collection. Again, it's not something that we are opposed to. However, you know, we have to, if we're going to do something like this, we have to have, you know, the majority of districts signing on to it to actually use the data and not say, oh, well, we may use it, but, you know, then again, we may not, you know, or we want you to send us the data, but we want to be able to change the data because, you know, before we put it up onto their system. Now, one thing I will tell you, and did I just clear the screen?
Nope, that's okay.
Good. One thing I will tell you, and I did forget to mention this during the CRDC portion of my presentation, the reason why I presented EDFACS and CRDC side by side is because the data that's given to the federal government in EDFACS is also the data they're expecting in the CRDC. So that also has a lot to do with it. You know, when you're submitting your PIMS information, remember that everything we submit for PIMS is used not just for the federal collections, but also in state collections. So some of the data may be slightly different when we actually submit it for EDFACS, because the federal government may be looking for a very specific amount of piece of information. So in the CRDC, you know, we may not have submitted what they're looking for in the CRDC in EDFACS, but 9 times out of 10 we did. So they're gonna bounce your CRDC data off of what we've submitted in EDFACS as well. So I guess I'm getting away from the point on this,
No.
but the thing is to actually create a system that would pool the CRDC data for you would actually require us to cross multiple platforms. So we wouldn't only be pulling from PIMS, we would also be pulling from the EDFACS reports and from other federal submissions that all go into making up your CRDC.
What we may be able to do if there's enough interest, actually some of the information is out there for you already. Run some of those reports in PIMS when you're looking for enrollments by race, for example. You already gave it to us. You can run a PIMS report and get those numbers. They're not going to be today's numbers. Kids move around, but you will have accurate numbers for the year. They vary from day to day. If there are additional reports that we could create to assist you, you know, that obviously is not as large a lift as creating a whole new system. We're certainly open to that. What I cannot do is collect additional information to support the CRDC because we are limited to collecting what is state and federally mandated. And while it is a federal mandate for LEAs, it is not for the state.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I would just say the feedback from the bigger schools is go ahead and not really.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think it's good that you guys are open to the suggestions.
All right, great. Let's go to IU23 then for the next question.
Yes, I was just wondering when the Excel spreadsheet for the school form will be available. I saw that they posted the LEA form.
I have actually asked that myself of them, and the response I was given was sometime after the new year. Okay, they are working on it. I don't know what the holdup is with it. The last time we did the CRDC collection was required. They had everything ready to go and in place, but there's some holdup, and I think it might be pieces of legislation that are sitting in the government that may require some additional information. It is coming though.
Thank you.
If the government does not shut down on Friday, it'll be a positive thing. Okay, so.
All right, let's go to IU13 for the next question.
Hello, yes. So the question we had here from the room is when the next CRDC collection is. Some changing of staff, we have some people that we want to make sure they're on top of what is due and when it's due.
We're currently in a collection. After the 17-18 collection closes, which we still have many months until that actually happens, the next collection after this will be for school year 19-20.
Answering the question. When is this question? We just want to know when the deadline.
I'm sorry, multiple people are talking.
So the deadline, so we're reporting now on last year's data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the deadline? When does the window close?
The deadline for this is April of 2019, I believe. I'm trying to remember because they haven't actually given me any solid deadlines either, because on a state level, we're really not that involved with the CRDC. Okay, that's the Office of Civil Rights going directly to the LEAs and getting this information. I will tell you this, I can tell you this, they have not contacted me yet to tell me that no school districts have been able to log in, or they haven't been able to get in contact with any school districts. So for my thinking, that could either be, okay, they've already done everything they need to do in Pennsylvania's school districts have all complied so far, or they haven't even started that process yet to let us know that they're missing school districts from signing into their system. So the big thing with the CRDC is, even though it may have started a few months ago, we really won't get into the big push for it until after the new year in January. But as I remember from the last collection, we finalized it and they sent me a certification email. I believe that was in May or June. I can't remember which month that was in. But I can actually get you more information on that. As I get information, I will gladly share it out with people that request it.
Thank you very much. Gives us a general time frame, so thank you.
Sure thing.
Great, let's go to IU24 for the next two questions.
I'm going to ask both questions. This is Nicole. Could you please, Joe, provide your email again slowly? Everyone couldn't catch it because it went pretty fast. So could you provide it again?
Sure. We're actually, during the break, Shane and I were talking. The two information slides in the EdFacts presentation and the CRDC, where it had all of the links to these different websites, we're going to place them in a PDF format. We're going to get them out to everybody. My email address will also be included with those slides. But in the meantime, my email address is c-jowan@pa.gov.
Perfect, thank you. And then I'm going to ask only part of the second question, because you did answer about the IUs. But can you clarify about part-time career technical buildings and full-time occupational student buildings? Like in the past, I have a career technical, the full-time students had to be reported by CRDC. So can you just clarify, because the language on their website makes it seem like everyone should be reporting as well.
That actually has not changed from the last time the CRDC was collected. So part-times, no. Full-times, yes.
Great.
Generally, if you think about across the country, not every state calls their educational agencies by the same names. For example, Pennsylvania has intermediate units. In federal language, that's a regional education agency. That's why you might not be seeing your specific LEA type out there. But generally, if you have a student full-time, then you are providing that information. And I say generally because I'm excluding IUs who may have some of those students full-time.
All right, great. Let's go to IU16 for the next question.
Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
We can hear you.
Fantastic.
Okay. In your presentation, you mentioned that we've been 4 months into this CRDC already. This is like the first I'm hearing of it, and my director said he never received anything. what do I do? Because I do this El Solo along with my other 6 full-time jobs. Who do I contact?
Well, I wouldn't be in panic mode just yet. Right now, even though we are 4 months into it, when I say 4 months, that's also the federal level. You know, like they've been notifying me, you know, when they start to open things and whatnot. Don't panic just yet, but do email me and let me know. Are you from a school district, an IU?
Comprehensive CTC.
Comprehensive CTC. Yeah, feel free to send me an email and I can do some investigating into it to see, you know, maybe they just, maybe they've been emailing out, they have the wrong email address or something like that, and they just haven't notified anybody yet. They're not completely done with their review of school districts yet, so no, it's no reason to panic at this point, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, we had a question from IU15, but that question was actually already answered earlier, so we're good there. We will jump to IU23, looks like for the next 2 questions.
Let's see. Go to the next one.
Go to the next question because that one was answer number 16. So we can go down to the next one after that for IU23, please.
Sounds good.
Hey, a little change of topic here under data governance. Can you confirm whether or not charter schools are obligated to complete the average length of teacher days survey that was recently sent out? Our charter school staff received the first email that said they had to do it, but didn't receive a follow-up, nor did they receive whether they were exempted from it.
Yes, I can confirm that. No, that is for school districts only. I apologize. There was an oversight and it was sent out to all LEAs. There was a technical glitch with our mail merge software and the attachment was not included to, you know, just make it even worse than it started out. Then immediately after they sent an email indicating that a new file would be sent on Monday because it went out Friday afternoon. We don't plan it that way on you, but it seems to happen that way frequently. But anyway, in that second email, it indicated it was only for school districts. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't get that. I've had countless emails. So please pass the information along, and when I get back to the department, you know, I'll look into the possibility of sending out another confirmation email. So it is only for school districts. There actually is a state law that requires us to calculate the average length of a teacher day, and you need to submit one number only. I know that your elementary schools might have a different length than your high school. Average it out. I'm answering all the questions I've gotten in the last couple of days in one. Hopefully I can hit a lot of people. You may send that as a whole number with 1 decimal or with 2 decimals. It doesn't have to be quarter hours. Our examples are all, you know, a whole hour, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Average it out. You know, if you have 20 minutes, that's 1/3 of an hour, you would tell us, you know, 7.34. You'll never hear from us again about this collection. This is one is not going to the federal government. It's not going to come back and impact you directly unless, and this is Deb Rodriguez making a guess, maybe the unions like that information when they're negotiating contracts. I have no idea of the use of the data except that it's mandated. We don't do it every year. It's a periodic thing. So you just put in your AUN, you received a file with 5 lines on it, put in your AUN, enter the average length of the school day for your district, email it back to us, and we'll take care of the rest.
All right, great. I believe that wraps up this Q&A session. So we would like to thank.
Sorry, the question, I was just trying to get a question in there and did not quite get it in under the wire. Do you have a quick minute to ask?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry. We had a question in the room. A bunch of people here did not get any emails about this yet. And so we weren't sure. Sounds like there's emails went out in other areas, is that something to be expected, or who do we contact at the CRDC about getting a copy of that email?
Well, okay, like I was telling the other IU, don't be in panic mode yet. Okay, remember you are dealing with the federal government, and I don't think I need to explain to you turtle and slow, all right? But you know, don't panic yet. We're not even into the after January date. But what I am going to do when I get back to my office later today, I'm going to call my friends at the Office of Civil Rights and see where they're at in what stage they're at in right now. If you remember the slide where we talked about the stages of the CRDC, they have to complete all of their stages before they even introduce us to our stages. So just because we're 4 months into it doesn't mean you're 4 months into it. It just means the Office of Civil Rights and the Civil Rights Coordinator for the state are 4 months into it, all right? Emails are constantly going out. They do them in batches. They don't just mass send things out. So they may not have even gotten to Pennsylvania yet. But don't panic, but I will find out some information, and I will send it out sometime this week. If you do not hear from me until after the first of the year, again, don't panic. It just means I haven't found out anything that's beneficial to anybody, and I'm in Costa Rica for 2 weeks. So don't panic. Don't blow up Deb's email. She'll be okay. Everything will be fine. We've done this before, and we will do it again. We made it through successfully. Pennsylvania got accolades the last time for the CRDC. We will again. Just don't panic. Every question I'm seeing about the CRDC, it sounds like everybody's panicking. Don't panic. I will tell you, like I tell my data stewards and data owners, don't panic unless you see me panicking. If you see me panicking, then run, okay? You'll be fine. Everybody will be fine.
Joe works very hard to get his gold stars for all the state's data in on time, so don't worry about it. He'll reach out to you if you have an issue.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, great. I think that wraps up the Q&A session now. So we'd like to thank Joe and Deb for presenting today and answering all the questions. We really appreciate it. What we'll do now is we will take a break. We'll do a 10-minute break, and we will come back at 10:45 for the next presentation. Thank you.
Shane, if you stop sharing, I will put up the registration link. And if
Sounds good.
If I could remind people, register for your chance to win a free registration. Do keep in mind this is a must be present to win competition.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So we have Dan and Jody here doing the next presentation, so we'll go ahead and hand it off to them to get started.
Okay, thanks. For those who don't know me, I'm Dan Ficka from the Bureau of Special Ed, and Jody Rissinger. We handle all special ed data, whether it's through PIMS or through Penn Data or any other source. So today we're going to talk about the 12-1 submission that just ended and some common issues and questions that came up during the collection. And then we're going to talk about the way we look at the data after the fact, and then we will send out some issues, some errors that you might have that you can correct during the correction window. Okay, so the first one. Every single special ed student should be reported for 12-1. Somebody should report every student. I had lots of calls where a student is a resident of a district, but placed somewhere outside the district, somewhere across the state, and they didn't place them there, so they don't report them. That's not true. You are going to get billed for that student. So if you receive a 4605 acknowledging that the student's a resident of your district, you will get a bill. You should submit that student. You should get the special ed idea money for that student, every single student. Just because you don't report them in PIMS for any other reason, you don't educate, you don't have to report them for anything else, you need to report them for 12-1. And that includes foster students as well, and I will get into some issues we had with foster students. But again, if you have a student that the foster parents reside in your district, you report for 12-1. Okay, 12/1 was a Saturday, so I had lots of calls on that. So assume that 12/1 was a Friday. Assume that it was 11:30. So if 12/1 was a Friday, would the student be yours? What would the placement would be? Whatever it was on 11:30. If they left your district and started somewhere else on 12/3, you should report them for 12/1 on your submission. You can do the withdrawal code on 12/3. So if your SIS won't take them, if you try to withdraw them on 11/30, withdraw them on 12/1. If you can't do it on 12/1, do it on 12/3. Okay? Same thing with the placement. Whatever the placement was on 11/30, that's what you should use, not the placement they might be on the following Monday on December 3rd. So you'll probably get, we'll be getting out a list of duplicates. I think we have, I don't know, 400?
353.
Okay, so I'm guessing that some of these will be the situation where 2 districts reported, 1 reported because they were there on 11:30, and the other reported because they figured they'll be there on 12/3, so they reported them. So you'll get the list, and hopefully that'll help figure out some of the duplicates. But again, if you had them at 11:30, they should be yours for the 12/1 submission. Okay, if you don't know what this is, best interest determinations. So a student is enrolled in a district, District A, they're educated there, they live there, then at some point they're then placed into a foster home in another district. So the district gets together with children and youth and other agencies and groups, and they determine that it's best for that student to stay and continue to be educated in District A, even though they now live with their foster parents in District B. District B should report for 12/1. Now, there are situations that I'm getting where people don't know, District B doesn't even know the student moved there. So I'm trying to get in touch with the foster liaison with PDE and other people to try to get other agencies to make sure that children, youth, and District A notify District B that this student is now living in your district in a foster placement, because you need to report that student for 12/1. So again, for this case, the district of residence doesn't matter. That's where the natural parent resides. This is a foster student. So you as the foster district are the funding district, which means you will be billed from the educating LEA. Again, you do not have to, I think I have a slide. Yeah. So again, foster students are reported by the district where the foster parents reside, other than if they're enrolled in a charter school. You do not have to enroll the student. I get that question a lot. I have a student that comes into my district in a foster placement. Should I enroll the student? No, the student's not being educated at your district. You do not enroll the student, but you do need to report them. So however that works for your SIS, you don't necessarily enroll a student, but you should report that student. The other issue is, okay, I don't have the student enrolled. I don't know anything about this student. How am I going to put together a student template and a special ed snapshot? You probably got the 4605, or you know that that student is staying in District A to be educated. Get in touch with them. They're going to bill you. So you say, you want to get paid, send me all the information so I could submit this student and get the idea money. And also you'll get the tuition for orphan subsidy also from PDE. So you'll be getting all that money because you'll be getting the bill. So again, I know sometimes you don't find out about it until 3 months later or a year later. So again, I'm trying to get everyone involved to notify the foster district that this stuff is happening, and it's going to happen more and more and more and more. Okay, so there are lots of DQE rules in place, and there are lots that we can't put in place because there's just too many variables. So we look at all this data starting now, and then we try to get it out. We will have it out to all the LEAs by the time the correction window opens, which is January 7th. So typically what we look at is educational environment percentage, service provider, and location of special ed services. So some of the big ones are cyber programs. And we said this every time, that if the students in a cyber program, or like a district-run cyber program, or any cyber program, they are considered with their regular ed peers, which means their education environment should be in 19, 20, or 21. It should not be instruction in the home or homebound. It should be 19, 20, or 21. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. Sorry. Also, we stress on field 71 that we need to know the location, the actual location. So in most cases, if you have a student receiving services in a regular public school building, you're putting in the 4-digit code. We have lots of LEAs who aren't doing that. They're putting the actual name of the elementary school or the middle school or the high school. That doesn't help us when we need to do reporting. You put the 4-digit code, then we can resolve it to the name, because you can type a name in of a school any way you want. So we find a bunch of those. So those will come back to you saying, put the 4-digit code in there. We also see, again, the elementary school, and then they don't have a 19, 20, or 21. CTCs also, lots of CTCs, students educated at a CTC, receiving services at the CTC. And then in field 71, they type the name of the CTC and not the 4-digit code. All CTCs have a 4-digit code. They should all be 19, 20, and 21. Community-based, same thing. Lots of community-based programs. Again, they are considered, even though they're not in a regular public school building, they should be 19, 20, and 21. Locally, there's one called Project Search. So they're out in a hospital, I think, the hospital setting, doing work. Or they could be out in working at a grocery store or something like that. That's all community-based, and that should all be Section A of the IEP, educational environment 19, 20, and 21. So there's a lot of those we found. Another one, field 71 again, says other building or outside placement, or one said building reported for PIMS. Saw that a bunch of times. So that doesn't help us. We get asked all the time, specifically, where are these students receiving services? So IU building, that doesn't help us either. So be specific as you can on the name of the building, location, or where they're receiving the services. Another big one is public versus private. We get asked how many students are receiving their services in a public facility versus a private facility. So we go through, and there's whatever we have, 300,000 records, sort them by location. There'll be 50 or 60 or 70 students all from the same, getting services at the same location, and 60% of them say it's public, and 40% will say it's private. So which is it? Sometimes you can tell in Edna. I know, sometimes you can't. A lot of times looking on the website, it'll tell you right away it's a nonprofit, it's a public, it's a private. So we are in the process of putting all that together, and eventually we'll be sending out lists to the IU data managers, who will then send it down to you so you can make the changes during the correction window. Again, we stress this all the time, and for the most part, it worked out well. The collection window is supposed to be an accurate representation of your 12-1 count, not one student or two students or just your elementary students, just to get the records in there so you get a green check and you don't get an email or text from, or email from us saying you're not timely. It's timely, yeah, but it is timely and accurate. So when you get those comparison reports, which you should be getting today, I think, you'll see where you had 350 students reported last year, and this year you have 2. So that's not accurate. What else? Yeah.
Okay. We send out, Dan starts usually 2 weeks prior, and then we start sending out lists of these LEAs have not submitted the special ed snapshot yet. We did really well. I'm impressed. This year when we closed that window, there were only 3 LEAs statewide, which usually there's a lot more. So everybody is starting to understand the importance of getting this in on time, and we've got some PIMS administrators that have finally conceded to the submission window is the submission window and the correction window is the correction window. One of the recommendations that came through pretty loud and clear was try to, and I'm going to look at Deb on this one, and she's probably going to tell me absolutely no way, but try to, if they haven't submitted during the submission window, then they can't do anything during correction window.
I would love that. I've been overruled from a higher level on more than one occasion.
So
I'm
we're
actually
going to
jealous.
keep
You
that.
have more control than I do.
We're going to keep that on the list of wishing it could happen, and maybe one day we can get that through. But it is promising that only 3 LEAs have not submitted at all. It's creative that we've submitted only 1 or 2 kids to get that green check to get through that submission, and kudos to those who have figured that out. But it's still not an accurate reflection. The comparison reports.
In
Yes.
the CSPR files 1 and 2, that is the federal government's rule. So it is so late, we will submit CSPR without the data because PA doesn't get the correction window.
Right.
We don't submit.
Right, and what I just reiterate what Deb said. We don't have the latitude that folks have here. When our windows open and close, they're closed. There is no correction, there is no resubmission, there is no change. When it's done, it's done. So that's why we push you so heavily to get that information in before we have to submit. Because if we have to submit and we submit without you, then that's potentially jeopardizing your funding. So just keep that in mind. The comparison reports were emailed out to the IUs yesterday. So just a really quick plea to the IUs that are having after meetings or while you have access to your IU data manager, ask them to see your comparisons if they haven't already sent them out to you, and maybe have a discussion locally since you're all close and in the same room. One of the big things that was kind of an aha moment for us at PDE just within the last 2 weeks is looking at the data for instruction conducted in the home, code 15 and code 9, hospital homebound. Hospital homebound code 9 is not an educational placement. It's listed as an educational environment, but it's not an IEP team decision. It's not an IEP team placement. You do report your homebound students in the, let me make sure I get it right. It's the special ed students at home reporting system. So you are reporting those students there. I think what's happening, just really quick thought on this, is data entry folks are saying, oh, I'm reporting this student on homebound over here, so he must be an educational environment of homebound. That should not change. The IEP team makes that decision. You shouldn't change that based on where they are at that moment. The educational environment of a student shouldn't change unless the IEP team makes that decision and changes it. So not sure how. We had 116 of them listed as homebound placement, and in their location in field 71 it says either home or homebound. The other thing that we noticed in a few districts is they list it as cyber at home. If that student is receiving a district-run cyber education, that's not a homebound placement. That student in a cyber program is still cybered in with regular ed students. It would be a 19, 20, or 21. So you're doing yourself a disservice as counting those students as homebound. They are receiving education with non-disabled peers in the cyber program, just their placement is at home. So just to get some clarification on that, take a look at the BEC. It's called Instruction Conducted in the Home, and it delineates at the end. It goes what the difference between homebound and instruction conducted at the home in the home is. And it also explains the students' special ed students at home reporting system that everyone should be using. And when I say everyone should be using, I can tell you what one of the things that, again, when this was an aha for us, one of the things that we're going to look at in the background is compare the students that were reported on 12-1 to the students that were reported in the homebound system and see where the mismatch is occurring. But that's one thing, definitely. While you have time in the correction window, make sure you go back. If you've reported any of those 09s or 15s, make sure that that's an accurate reflection of the student. Where did she say to look? It's the Basic Education Circular. You can either go on the Patent website or you can do a search on the PDE website for Basic Education Circular, and the name of it is Instruction Conducted in the Home. So they're listed in there alphabetically. You scroll down through to the I's and it'll be right there. You click on that and it'll open the language. It gives you all of the background federal and state regulation that's tied to each of those pieces. And if there's still questions, you can email Dan or I or John Gombotes, our policy person who's sitting in the back of the room nodding his head. We can get you his email as well. That's all I have.
That's all I have.
Just make sure you check those comparison reports, and now's the time, if there's errors, to get them fixed as soon as that correction window opens, because this is the collection that drives your special ed IDEA dollars.
All right, great. We will go ahead and pause for just a couple of minutes and allow people to submit questions, and then we'll go directly into the Q&A session. All right, so we'll go ahead and start the Q&A session. It looks like we only have one question right now, so we'll go to IU24 to go ahead and ask the question.
Hi, I'm asking this for one of our districts. They have a student who is a legal non-resident outplaced in Delaware, but the school district is here in Chester County. In the student template, they use the status code R because they are court placed or agency placed, but not in a foster home. In PIMS, they're getting an error that this field is R, so for the special ed template, they want it to be a Y. But the PIMS manual specifies that yes is for students placed in a residential facility or group home in the same state. What should they be? Should they take out the R code in the student template? How should they fix this for reporting purposes?
No, don't take out the R code. You are doing it correctly. 99% of the time this rule will work and should work. So I would suggest just put a data exception in and explain that, and it will be approved.
Thank you.
All right, great. I think that actually wraps up this Q&A session. So we'd like to thank Dan and Jody again for presenting. We really appreciate them taking time to come out here and present again. So right now we'll stop sharing at IU15 and then we'll move on to the next presentation.
Hello, I'm Barry Fry from Central Intermediate Unit 10, and our December team, we put out a brief activity to get you a little more familiar with what information is available on the Future Ready Index, PA Index site. So one of the Okay, there we go. So the suggestion was to go out and find out what sort of information is publicly available for one of my school buildings. So let me do an example here. All right, and then we get into the site here, and if we get down to the area where it says school and it's highlighted, that'll get us into that elementary school. And let's go into the school fast facts, and in that area there, you'll be able to find out some information such as percentages on economically disadvantaged, your special education percentage, be able to find the school enrollment for that particular building, and the name of the supporting intermediate unit. And another thing you can find out is what is the percentage of 2 or more races. And one thing I want to point out here about the measures, right there you can see the 3 different measures of meets or exceeds a statewide goal, meets or exceeds the interim target, and also does not meet the statewide or the interim target. And then they can be indicated with an up or a down arrow, or on the right on the dot. So when you get into the fast facts, you can have a look at what are your percentages for economically disadvantaged, your English learner information, special ed, homeless, and can also find out what your breakdown is by race, ethnicity. And here we can see the breakdown by gender, which is pretty much 50-50 in this particular school district. So if we go into the school performance, we had looked at the key measures previously. So let's have a look at view all on track measures. And here we can see the breakdown for all student groups. And also I'll make note that if you see an IS, that just means that there's insufficient data to be posted. So let's have a look at regular attendance. And we'll look at the students group breakdown. Here you can see this particular district that their percent of students with regular attendance is actually above the statewide average. So when we look at their regular attendance, we see everything that has sufficient data. They're all green. So this is a good indicator for this district. Now do I have to share and unshare?
Yep.
All right. And also in that activity, if you page down, eventually we will page down. So when you get out into the area for regular attendance on the Future Ready Index, there's a link there that you can find out some information about absenteeism. But just to note that rates of chronic absenteeism will be reported as regular attendance. And there's details on how that's going to be calculated. And what I found out this morning is this particular link, I notified the webmaster that it's not working. I have also gone out to the education.pa.gov and did a search on chronic absenteeism, and that was not working this morning. So hopefully we'll get that fixed. Question I had asked here was, is an approved family-sponsored educational trip counted as an absence? Yes or no? You may not know this, but you should know it today that it is yes, it is counted as an absence. So keep that in mind. And something else that I've become aware of is that some districts are incorrectly marking absences. A couple examples would be a hospital stay. They should not be marked as an absence. Or if you have a cyber student that's not been completing their assignments, you should not mark them as absent. And if you are interested in improving your attendance, here's a link to get out to a YouTube site that will give you a lot of information on things that you can do to help improve your attendance if there seems to be a problem. So when you click on that link, it'll bring you to the tiny URL site, which you will then click to proceed to that site, and you'll be able to watch that video. And that was just a brief look at Future Ready PA Index. So so you can take some time and look at your particular buildings to find out some additional information. So we're ready for questions.
Ready for questions.
So I'll stop sharing.
You can, yep. We'll give you a second if anybody wants to put any questions in. They're all anxious for the drawing.
Yes.
We're between them and the drawing.
Yes. We're the only thing that stands between them and the drawing.
I don't see any questions yet.
Students in the hospital, they do not get marked out.
We have someone with a question. Can we just jump in and ask
Just
it?
jump right in. Thank you.
In looking at our high school data, the special ed percentage is way off. I looked through my data in 17, 18, and I see what I submitted to PIMS, but it is not accurate with what's portrayed in Future Ready. How do I resolve this?
Would that be a Deb question?
Yeah, is that something we can send back to IU15 if they're still there?
We're here, just give us 1 second. You're good.
All right. Hi. What you can do is email the Future Ready mailbox, and a decision will be made as to whether or not it's possible to correct that data. I think this is a good time for me to have a commercial and actually beg you to make sure your data is right in PIMS, because it's not always possible to go back and fix it after the fact. So I'm sorry, that's not a definite answer. Decisions are being made on an individual basis, far above my pay grade.
We have the data correct in PIMS, but it's just not showing correct on the site.
Send the details in. I'm not aware of anything wrong with the data in, as far as a incorrect calculation in Future Ready. We need to look at it. We'll look at it individually. It's possible. What exactly is wrong with it? Which data element?
Special ed percentage of high school students is 5% in Future Ready, and it is 38% when I submitted the PIM. In field 38, that's where you're pulling from.
I'm wondering if they didn't include pen data. I don't know. Well, send in the email and they'll look at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard this question. That's the reason I'm kind of hesitating. Normally, if there's a major mistake, we hear a lot about it. But that doesn't mean you weren't the first person to discover something.
This is IU24. Can you better explain why a hospital stay is not considered an absence? There's some confusion in the room here on that.
Because we're paying. Sure, because the federal guidelines say any absence, whether the child is sick or on an excused absence, counts as an absence for this particular piece of information that they're asking for. The directions are explicit. We don't get to determine it's a good absence versus a bad absence. The purpose of this data element is a student not in a classroom can't learn regardless of the reason. I have no ability, really no one at PDE has the ability to change that.
So then I misspoke about the hospital stay. I stand corrected.
No, you did not misspeak. An absence is an absence. There's no difference between excused absence and unexcused absence for, I want to say chronic absenteeism, regular attendance. It's different when you're submitting to safe schools. That's a different purpose for that collection. But for regular attendance, it's basically the student is there or the student is not there. I can tell you, Pennsylvania, and we are in the process of reviewing how we do this, but I know I have grandchildren in Ohio in kindergarten and second grade, and they are documenting their absences to the minute. So if you pick them up 10 minutes early, they're absent for 10 minutes and they're adding it up to meet this requirement. Let's hope we don't go to that detail. You can see this. I mean, if you can't sleep at night, you can pull out the ESSA plan from the federal government and read their direction. There are some things that they just felt strongly about, apparently.
Stacy, do you have that correction then?
Yes, see, I agreed that it should have been counted as an absence, but in the presentation, it says it's incorrectly reporting the student as an absent. So that's why I was looking for clarification.
Thank you for getting that clarified.
So I was incorrect saying that I was correct.
So then the other question I have is, for example, some of the district-run cyber programs, if students don't complete X amount of assignments in a week, they do mark them absent because that's the way they're using that if that student's over 17 to drop the student. So if you're not doing your assignments, they consider that an absence. And when you have so many, we can drop you from the roll. So is that okay as well?
I am not aware of the rules around absent or not absent relative to cyber schools. It makes sense to me if the student didn't log in and do the work that they're not there. I suggest addressing that with child accounting because remember this same data element is used for funding and I don't want to say anything that's going to mess that up. One thing I did want to point out from mistakes that we've seen to add to what Barry told you, I've seen people mark students as absent because they went to maybe a vocational career in tech or a full-time, they're not in the school. And I'm thinking maybe the purpose was, I don't need to bus this student or they're not going to be here for lunch today. But you do need to consider if your student is attending school someplace else, you do want to mark them present. It will impact you. Maybe they have a work study or some type of job mentoring where they're off of the school campus, but it's still part of being in school. Those are some places where I've seen some very low attendance rates. And I think maybe it had to do with students that their schooling took them away from the traditional sit in the classroom for all or part of a day. So just a heads up to be cautious about that. And I'm not sure if that conflicts with child accounting. Please reach out and let me know if we have work to do.
Sounds like an investigation into attempt to be worth a follow-up.
We do usually tell you local policy, but local policy does not get to override federal policy. So an absence is an absence for this case. We can't, I might want to get someplace quickly and drive 100, but if the speed limit's 65, I'm going to get a ticket. You don't want to be near me if I'm trying to drive that fast.
I don't see any more questions in the back channel. So I
Good
think
morning, Barry.
we do have another question.
There is a question coming from IU 21. Who should we contact for an incorrect grade level listed on our district page and on some school pages in the PAFRI and in EDNA? We submitted grade changes for our elementary buildings this past spring, summer, but grade levels listed are not correct on either site. They have contacted the Future Ready address.
What district?
East Penn.
Okay, Joe Cohen is the person you can contact. I'm guessing here, but there is a whole process to changing grades. And until you submit all of the required paperwork, we cannot process that. So it requires you to put it out for public notice, to have board minutes, to send, put it out for 60 days and include board minutes. So just asking to change your grade configuration won't get that done for you until all of the paperwork is submitted. So email Joe and he could look into your specific instance. I ask because we have one district that is changing their elementary schools in the middle of the year, which is a huge nightmare for the school and for PDE. When you submit your data when we submit your data to the federal government, they match it. So what's going to happen is if you have different schools on October 1st and we submit with your assessments in the fall, it's all going to fall out of the federal system and say, hey, you have students with no tests. Hey, you have students in a school that doesn't exist. That's why we have rules about changing in the summer. So that is the other possibility, that by the time your changes got here, it was too late. I don't know which it is.
Hey Deb, this is Justin. Two more things to add. If you haven't emailed the school configurations account along with the Future Ready account when you do this, follow up with them, because that would be the resource account where all of this EDNA information is tracked. And shameless plug for next month, we're tentatively scheduled to do a EDNA presentation regarding all of these timelines and processes that you just alluded to in January.
Thanks, Justin. And Joe will be back.
Take advantage of this opportunity if anybody has any other questions. It sounds like we've got them all, at least for now. So I will do Deb, do you want to do a presentation first?
Yeah, we'll do that.
I don't care, we want to do that first? Okay, yeah, I will.
Yep, give us 1 second. We'll set up for the quick presentation. All right, looks like we're ready to go for the quick presentation on the Data Summit Award winner for November's meeting. So we'll hand it over to Deb to get started.
We worked together with your leadership for Data Quality Network and realizing that the November DQN meeting was the day before Thanksgiving, and wanting to keep with our schedule, we thought anybody who actually showed up deserved a reward. My budget doesn't allow me to give everyone an award, but it did allow us to have a drawing so someone can be rewarded for their diligence the day before they probably had a lot of work to do, company coming or taking a trip. And so we decided that we would auction off to anyone present a free certificate to attend the Data Summit, which is March 24th to the 27th in Hershey. The lucky winner is Maggie Stern from Cumberland Valley School District. Just call me, okay, or Adrian, okay, when you're ready, and we'll make sure that you get into the Data Summit without having to enter a purchase order or a credit card. All right, thank you. Thank you. We're also going to auction off one of those today, and I think Dan and Barry are already there. I was kind of impressed with how they were going to do this. You know, my technical skills would have been everybody put a piece of paper in a fishbowl and we pull one out, but that's kind of hard to do across the state, but they have it all figured out. Dan, go ahead.
All right, so we're going to give you 2 minutes. If you haven't done it yet, here's the site. All right, the counter is starting now. You have 2 more minutes to get in. Must be present to win. So I'm going to ask our colleagues around the state that if you have the winner, have them make as much noise as we got last month so that we know that your person is present. All right, let's share this out with everybody. That way you can see the actual spinning of the wheel this month. Everybody is loaded into our magic wheel, and with a click of the button, we will draw a name. And the winner is?
Scream, everybody! Yeah!
She laughed.
She laughed. Oh. Well, I feel really bad, but I'm going to click this spinner wheel again then.
Another chance. Okay, here's the next chance for somebody else.
Sally, are you there?
We're excited.
Yeah.
All right. So Deb, I'll send you a copy of this contact information, and we'll reach out to Sally in January.
Sally, Adrian's not in work today, so I'm going to take his spot and do a commercial for the Data Summit. It's the 24th through the 27th of March. They have a great program planned. You will see the agenda will be finalized in January. There is some information out on the website if that helps you now to get the approvals you need to be able to attend. We're doing a big piece on STEM this year, using data for STEM and to evaluate programs which could be adapted to any type of program, but also STEM itself. He has 2 mobile labs coming. One is a tractor trailer, just so people can experience what other districts are doing. Your work definitely impacts the students in your districts. It really does. We look at that data. If you look at Future Ready PA Index, you can see how the data that you're entering is identifying good things that are happening and areas where growth needs to occur. It's really, really important that data is accurate. It's also important that your administrators understand what's going on here. So please share with them. I think the mobile STEM labs, the STEM program will be of interest. We also will be providing, once again, as always, there's Act 48 credit for those who need it. Simply attend a session, stay the entire time, and you get an hour credit. We are offering a pill program again this year. Last year, we had a last-minute request to do that. We had a number of, like about 24 participants, which was great. This year, we've had more time to plan it. We're offering 30 hours. Please let your administrators know. They can get half of their year's requirement for pill if they come to the Data Summit. I want to see the administrators work together with you to get the information you're getting. I'm hoping that this will help bring more administrators to the Data Summit. So it'll be a fun time. We have some fun things planned. So in addition to the work, so please pass it along. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for coming. A quick plug for our January session. And as you walk out the door, if you could take a moment and complete your feedback form. Thanks all for coming, and we'll see you in January.